And this is where pro-lifers have really injured their own position, because the people who are their best potential allies are the women that have had these doubts, are the women that are feeling bad. But when they condemn these women, when they harshly accuse them of murder, of not caring, of just being horrible people, instead of reaching out to them and comforting them and assuring them that they can find and loving them regardless of what they've done. And yet, I have failed miserably as a pump, and there's no justification for that. So what we have here is that we can't prove that anybody is a person, that anybody has rights, because the assigning of rights is a presumption. You know, we presume that everybody that's been born has rights, but not every society has done that. So what we need to do is to decide, is there a real rationale for assigning rights to a newborn and yet not assigning rights to that same child, 5 minutes before he's born, 5 weeks before he's born, 5 months before he's born? Is there a rationale? And what we find, of course, is that babies have been known to survive from 5.5 months on. They usually don't survive unless they're at least 6 months. But, and even then, a lot don't. I don't know if we're saving a majority yet or not. But the little known fact is, many abortions are taking place at 4 months. And many of these children, if they weren't killed, if their bodies weren't made lifeless before they came out, they would cry. And they might live for several minutes to several hours before finally dying. So it's not that they're not alive and able to live on the outside. It's that they can't sustain life for very long on the outside. But again, they can cry. They move their limbs. They seem to respond to pain. There's been experiments where babies in the womb, they would play, we'll say, Mozart regularly, so that's what they were used to. And then after they're born, if they play Mozart, they pay attention to it in a way they don't if Bach is playing, and so on. They can put sugar in the amniotic solution, and they swallow faster and taste it. They seem to sleep and dream. They seem to touch themselves, rub their forehead. All kinds of things that are suggestive of a child. Now, I'm not saying that this proves that they're people. It doesn't. Because, again, it's an arbitrary choice. But the question becomes, is there a rationale for drawing the line at viability at 6 months where we currently draw it, and in fact some abortions even take place after that? Is there a rationale for doing it, back to 4.5 months when the baby could potentially be born alive and actually survive for a short period of time and look and sound and behave just like, well, a baby? And so on, all the way back to my flash drive argument. We're not looking at proof, but we're looking at indicators that at least provide some kind of rational basis. Okay, let's turn that around and look at the whole notion of, okay, it's only a baby after it's born. Okay? Again, that was a very logical argument at one time. How could the baby be alive in there if it wasn't breathing? Wouldn't it suffocate? Very reasonable question. But we now know the answer to that question. The baby is respiring. He's not breathing air in and out, but he's getting oxygen from the mother's blood. He's getting oxygen from his environment, the mother's uterus, and he's exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide and other nutrients. Again, this isn't so different from what takes place after he's born, except that his lungs are better developed, and he starts, after he's born, he can breathe air, and he can take nutrition into his stomach. But I have to say, that doesn't strike me as being a terribly sound basis for saying, oh, he can't, he can only breathe a few minutes on his own, so he can't be a person. So this strikes me as being far more arbitrary than doing the pro-life position, but not on the basis of religious preference, but on the basis of, are there scientific facts which at least suggest that there's something to that approach. And let's consider the consequences, the potential consequences. What if we did have a soulometer? We'll pretend we have such a device, and we'll posit two potential outcomes. A, we'll say, okay, the spirit enters at birth, and that's when it's a person, and we've deprived, X number of women sovereignty over their bodies. We've inconvenienced some of them, for this. Some have even died because they took chances to save a baby that wasn't even a person yet. Okay, there's a problem there. But let's look at the other problem. If our soulometer tells us, yeah, we really did destroy all these people, then we're coming up on like 40 million children that have been brutally murdered in the worst way. I mean, if they are people, that's the conclusion you come to. You come to the conclusion that that our attempt to help women have a better life has ended the life of over 20 million little girls, many of which would be voting women today, which is a horrific thing. This puts this on a scale which dwarfs the Nazi genocide of the Jews, or Stalin's purges, or Lenin's 20 million deaths from collectivizing agriculture in the old Soviet Union, or the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, who killed half of their own people, and on goes the record of mass murders, of megicides. Again, it's not that I am saying that I've actually proved that that's the case, but what I think I have demonstrated is that that is the more probable case. At least it's the case that has the most substantive evidence from a scientific standpoint. And again, it is a philosophical problem, and you can't resolve it entirely scientifically. But if we're going to use science as our basis so that we're not just indulging our own private opinions, then we have to at least consider the possibility that this has happened. And if this is so, then I don't think that Nuremberg-style trials is the right solution to this. I think that we need to have a way to have healing and forgiveness and restoration, and to help people deal with the tremendous pain that they're going to have as they realize that they may have allowed themselves to be robbed of the most precious accident that ever befell them. And By the way, you know, people say, well, what about the woman that's been raped? I am that child. I am the product of a rape. And yes, my relationship with my mother has been strained my entire life, but I'm still glad that I'm here. You know, despite continual verbal abuse and even physical abuse, I'm glad I'm alive. I'm happy. Please don't tell me that my life couldn't have been worthwhile because it started out that way. It's not my fault what my father did. I'm going to be posting further videos on the subject of how to find forgiveness, how to forgive ourselves for things that we feel bad about, and how to let loose of the condemnation that other people have heaped upon us, and even how to stop judging and condemning other people, because when the pro-lifers that are condemning and judging are chaining themselves to the people that they have come to despise, and they're in the bondage that they're putting these people in. We need to forgive people not because they deserve to be forgiven, but you need to forgive people because you don't deserve to be trapped in unforgiveness and to reap the bitter harvest that brings. So stay tuned to this channel, and I want you to consider that though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. That's the promise in Isaiah, and that's the gospel that I want to present, a gospel of love and restoration, because Jesus came to save the sinners, not the people who think that they're righteous and think that they have everything all together. So I wish you well, and I have no judgments or condemnation towards any of you, and I apologize to any of you that I may have been harsh with in the past. We're all hopefully trying to grow into a better place. God bless and have a fine day.